Hello, I'm Rhiannon, owner of the Epsom Bakehouse, and coming on today to talk another bread making tip, and that is how to check that your finished loaf is baked through and ready to eat. And I'm sure when you're baking a loaf at home, the smell of that delicious fresh bread is really tempting as soon as you take it out the oven. So I wanted to talk about a couple of checks you can make before you dive in and start slicing up your bread. And if you're looking to bake more great bread at home, then you can sign up for bread making tips, recipes, and more information about my online classes through my regular newsletter. And the link is below this video. And in fact, at the moment, if you sign up, you'll also learn more about some offers that in this period, in November currently, and it is actually my birthday month as well, so it will be some offers coming out on my online classes and on my Bread Baking 101 course, which is a foundation. It's the mastering the basics of baking great bread at home. So if you're thinking you want to get started, or you know a baker who wants to get started on baking their own great bread at home, then do sign up to the newsletter to hear more about this offer and future offers as well. So today I want to take a moment to talk a bit about how to check that your loaf is baked through. And we've got this delicious loaf here, granary loaf, sliced a little bit off the end to show you inside as well. But obviously if you've spent time mixing, kneading, shaping and rising your dough, then you don't want to get to the end and think, oh my gosh, have I actually baked that loaf through properly? And you find on the separate videos that I've done talking about how to get that great bake with the high temperature in your oven and introducing steam into your oven and other things like that. But how long does your bread take? And yes, your recipe will probably have a suggested baking time, but all ovens vary. You might have hot spots in your oven. It might be a slightly cooler oven. Obviously still really hot, but it might just be a slightly cooler temperature than other hot ovens. And so you want to make sure that your bread is fully baked through when you take it out of the oven. And so a couple of things that you are looking for is, obviously one thing that will happen is that your bread will rise in the oven, and it's really demonstrated on this loaf, which has been baked in a tin, and you can see kind of where the tin would have come around the edges of this loaf, and the loaf will come up to about here. The dough will come up to about the edges of the tin when you put it in. And what you're also looking for is that the dough has risen in the oven. So has your dough risen up and created a bit more rise on your loaf in the oven? Most breads will do that in the oven as the gas in your dough expands and your dough rises a bit more before this crust forms around the outside. And on this loaf, you can see what are called the shoulders of the loaf, this kind of paler bit where the top has risen up, and it creates these shoulders around the edge of the loaf. So check that your dough has risen a bit more in the oven. Also demonstrates that your dough was rising well before you put it in, so your yeast were active and you're creating gas that creates that final fluffy inside that I'll show you in a moment. Second thing to look for is the colour. So you want to get a beautiful golden brown colour all over on your loaf, so on the underside as well as on the top. So the top may brown more quickly, and you might need to cover your loaf with foil towards the end of baking time to make sure it doesn't burn on top whilst you're getting that final bake. Also with something like a tin loaf like this, you could take it out the tin at the end of the bake and put it back in on the rack or on a baking tray on the rack to kind of make sure that the edges are browned as well and it's fully baked. So get that nice beautiful golden brown colour all over your loaf and check it. And then one more thing you can check is obviously when your loaf is hot out the oven, you won't be able to hold it, but you might be able to hold it, say, in an oven glove and tap underneath. And you get this beautiful hollow sound on your loaf. And really what that is meaning is that inside, if I just show you inside, you don't have a doughy centre which would give that kind of dull, dead sound. So instead you've got this beautiful, well-risen inside of your loaf, what's called the crumb, and it's light and airy and full of gas. So really through, so without having to cut your loaf open, you can tap and feel that hollow, hear that hollow sound. But also, if you're holding your loaf in one hand, if you tap at the other end, you should be able to feel the vibrations of that tap down through your hand as well. So it goes all the way through and there's no doughy center. So a few checks. Now, one thing I would not suggest doing is slicing your loaf open when it is still really hot. Let it cool down completely and check. So this is why it's good to do these checks before your loaf cools down, because if you do these checks and, for example, you get quite a doughy sound or your loaf is quite pale underneath, you'll know that you'll need to put it back in to get that really great bake. And you do want to make sure that it's well baked through so that you haven't got a doughy centre and instead you've got a delicious loaf of bread to enjoy at home. So those are a few checks you can make when you're baking bread at home and you want to check that your loaf or your bread is fully baked through before you leave it to cool and then enjoy it. And as mentioned, if you'd like to hear any more of these bread making tips, then either let me know what your bread making question is in the comments below this video, or you can sign up for my regular newsletter, and the link for that is below this video. And you'll get to hear more bread making tips and recipes, but also offers and information about my upcoming online classes and courses. And that does include my Bread Baking 101 course, which is all focused on mastering the basics of baking great bread at home. So do sign up if you want to hear more, or if you'd like more bread making tips. And I look forward to chatting more bread making tips again with you very soon.